Welcome to this video. My name's Beckham and the subject here is multi-images to a page and layer clipping, which is a lot more interesting than it sounds. Here we're going to use Photoshop and layers to create a template, something we can use again. Normally when we create templates it's because something is either very difficult to do or very time consuming. I think this technique is going to buck that trend, as I hope you'll see. It can be the basis for the example we showed in one of our videos called creating a layered image, and what you're looking at on screen here is one example that's actually very quick to do. The technique can take us into a triptych, either oblong images, oval images, or even a mix of the two. We can use the same techniques for almost any multiple layout that we can dream up. What's going to make this quite easy and quick to do is Photoshop layers, but also smart guides. These are extremely clever and we don't even need to turn them on. We create our artwork first, then using layers we drop in images for a creative presentation. Refinements like fine lines and drop shadows just finish things off. I need to start this process by creating a new blank canvas, but we need to give some thought to what we're actually going to produce here. If I was going to produce something I wanted to print 4 foot long for the wall, maybe a canvas wrap, then of course I've got to make my artwork relative to that size. If I was creating images for a slideshow, then I may keep them a little bit smaller. For this demonstration I'm going to assume we're making a slideshow, but the techniques are no different no matter what size we create. So let's go to the top left of the screen and choose File, New, and I'm going to select a document size. I don't think I've got one here. I'm going to go for 2560 pixels on the long side and 1440 high. Now that's marginally bigger than 1920-1080, which is the HD size, but it also retains the 16:9 aspect ratio. I'm going to select white as my background color and create it. Control 0 will fit the image on screen. You'll also notice that I've turned on the rulers in Photoshop. Now I suppose I should tell you how to do that. Control R will toggle the rulers on and off, but if you want to find them, they're in the View menu. There they are, and there's the reminder of the shortcut, Control R. Now the good thing about rulers is we can move into the rulers, click and drag, so we could bring out guides, so we could get the perfect border all the way around our artwork. The trouble is you can see it's not easy to see the measurement here to get it absolutely accurate. We can right click in the rulers and choose a different way of measuring, but I'm going to suggest a little tip here. We can always get rid of the guides. I can hover over them and drag them back, or you can go to the View menu and just hide the guides. But what I'm going to suggest we do is we make a tiny little square for the corner and we use that as a shortcut. Now this is probably best demonstrated than explained, so I'm going to go to File, New once again. I'm going to make a square 50 pixels by 50 pixels. This time I'll create it in black. I'll drag the tab from the top of the screen, click, drag and drop the square into my artwork. Now if the square isn't big enough for you and you want a wider border than that, then just make another one and adjust the size. Make it 75 pixels or 100 pixels. What I'm going to do is to drop that to the top left, and can you see how it's snapped into place? I can close this one down now. I don't need it. But now look how easy it is to set up a nice border here using the guides, because when I drag this one out from the left it'll snap to the right edge of my square. This one will snap to the bottom. If I then move this down to the bottom right, that also snaps into position, and then I can drag out an upright guide and a horizontal one, and then drop this in the bin because we don't need it. I'll hit delete, and now we've got the perfect guide around the outer edge from which to start. So what I'd like to do is to create a new canvas over the top of my background, and I can do that from the bottom right of the layers. Then I'm going to reach for my rectangular marquee tool from the selection tools here and go into the edge of that line. I'm going to click and drag, and you'll see that it will snap to that line. I want to try to create three more or less even shapes here, so I'm guessing just a little bit. But you'll also notice that I can click within the shape and drag it, and those smart guides has allowed that to snap four square in the center of the screen. I'm going to live with that shape for a moment. I'm going to flood it with black. Alt backspace will do that. Control D will remove that selection. And with the move tool selected, I can drag it to the left hand side, and that guide now is going to snap it perfectly into position. Now I need the same shape on the right hand side. Here's a tip. With the move tool selected, hold the Alt key. The cursor changes to those two little arrows, and when I click and drag, if you look at the layers now, you can see exactly what we've done. We've created exactly the same shape on the other side. Now I wanted to put an oval shape in the middle, and it's now I've got to make a decision. Did I make these too wide or not wide enough? They don't look too bad, but I'm not going to be entirely sure till I create the oval shape. So let's create another new blank layer at the top of the layers. Let's go back to our selection tools and select the elliptical marquee. I'll start at the top there and drag out the shape. Now whenever you create a selection, don't worry too much that you may not have got the perfect shape straight away, because you can transform a selection, and this is a good example of that, I think. If I go to my select menu at the top of the screen, I can transform my oval. So if I wanted it a little bit fatter than I've got it, you can see I've got the opportunity to do that. When I hit the tick on the options bar, there's my selection. I can hit Alt backspace, flood that shape with black, Control D. I can sit back and just decide if I've got this about right. But I'm looking at the top there, and I was just trying to make sure that the curve wasn't flattened at the edge. It isn't, so it's just, I think, an optical illusion when you see it against that guide. I'm going to pick up my move tool just to make sure that that is perfectly in the center. Because what I'd like to do is make a new selection of that oval, increase the size of it a little bit so I can cut a shape out of the left hand side and the right hand side so that it just looks attractive as a presentation. Now here's another great tip. Hold the Control key and click a layer, and you'll find it'll select what's on the layer. Now I've got to expand that selection. Now when you think that 50 pixels is that much, I think that's going to be about right. So if I go to select and I go down to modify, expand, I'm going to make that 50 pixels and click OK. But I also want to save that selection because I need to use it twice. So I'm going to go to my select menu once again. I'm going to choose save a selection. I'm going to call this oval. If I don't hit the wrong keys, of course, and click OK to that. I'm going to turn off my oval shape for a moment. There's no absolute need to do this. It's just so you can see probably a bit clearer what I'm about to do. I'm going to select the shape on the left hand side, and using that selection, Control X or Edit Cut, and you can see the sort of shape I wanted to remove. And now you can see why I needed to save that selection, because I need to select the shape on the right hand side, but I need to retrieve the selection. So go back to your select menu, load it. We're looking for oval. Control X once again. Then when I put my oval back in there, you can see the artwork we've managed to create, and we've done this in a very short time. Now what we could do now is to remove those rulers. There's no need for them to be there. Control R will take them away. The image is just a little bigger on screen. What I need now is 3 images to drop into the shapes. I'm going to go into Photoshop's bridge and try to pick 3 that I think will fit. I've got one there which I'd like to see if I can fit in the middle. It may be a bit tricky given that the oval is a vertical and this is a landscape, but we'll see. And I thought I'd put this balloon on one side and maybe this one on the other. Now to save even a little more time, what we would need to do with these 3 layers, or these 3 images, is to open them up and drag them into our artwork one at a time. We can speed that up by selecting all 3, going to the tools at the top left of Bridge, selecting Photoshop and load files into Photoshop layers. It only takes a few seconds for Photoshop to put all of those into a layered stack. Now I can drag that tab from the screen, select all 3 of those, and then click drag and drop them from one place to another. This is just telling me that the color depth is different between them. No problem with that. I'm just going to click OK, and I can close down that original without saving it. Now the first thing you'll notice is the images look colossal. Think about what we've done here. This is quite normal. Had my intention been to make a higher resolution print, then I would have made my background much higher resolution and the images would be much smaller on screen. But because I'm making an image for a slideshow, I have pulled into here images from a high definition camera, so we've got plenty of scope to resize the images. So let me turn off this one, and we'll just concentrate on the one that I hope I can fit into that middle oval. It may be a little bit wrong in format, but let's try it. I need to drag it just above the oval shape, and here's another great Photoshop piece of wizardry. Hold the Alt key, move the cursor over the 2 lines, and what we do is we clip one image to another. With the Move tool selected, you can see exactly what I've got. So here, if I wanted to, I could have the center of my artwork, something like that. But I've got more scope than that because I can hit Control T, which is the free transform tool, and I've just got it selected on the balloon. Control 0 so we can see the toggles around it, and holding the Shift key to keep it in register with height and width, I can now start to see if this image is going to fit in my oval. Wow, it's tight, isn't it? I'm going to force it just a little bit. I'm just going to distort the image a little bit just to bring it in around the edges there. I think we'll just about get away with that. I do want to make sure we don't lose anything top and bottom. When I hit the tick on the options bar, there we've got the image wrapped around the shape. Now you can see why it's useful to store these, because we could create many more using the same artwork. Let's take this image next. Let's drag that down to the left shape, and once again that little bit of Photoshop magic, hold the Alt key, move over the line and clip the image to the shape. Now we just need to size the image accordingly. Control T will do that, which is our free transform tool. But any time we do bring up the free transform tool, of course, we always lose the bounding box when we've got an image of this size on screen. So just hit Control 0. Now that's another great shortcut key which fits the image on screen. But if we have a bounding box in place, which you can see around this image, then it fits that too. So either lock the height and width of this image using the chain link at the top of the screen. It says there maintain aspect ratio, or if you want to save going and doing that, hold the shift key, drag in the corner toggle. I can click and move and drag in the bottom, and I can gradually shuffle this around. When I get close, I can hit Control 0. I can start to move this around and get exactly what I want. I think I'll just tweak this one a little bit to bring it from that left edge, but I'm more or less happy with that. I think that looks okay. I'm going to hit the tick, and now I just need to do exactly the same with the right hand shape. Now when you think of what we've created here, if I stop my video at this point, we've only been working 16 minutes. It's not a colossal amount of time to create what we've created here and go through it step by step as well. Of course, things get a lot quicker if you're not talking your way through it. Now with the spinning round of the screen, here's the image I showed briefly earlier, because we're not tied to just making a triptych. Of course, I stayed with a triptych shape because it's pretty traditional among photographers, but we can create artwork in any shape we wish for as many pictures as we wish. And if you look over on the right hand side, what you're seeing in the layers is exactly the same as what we've just done with our 3 balloons. So coming back to our balloons, let's just add a little bit of style to these. I think what I'll do, so you can see the effect more clearly, is to clear those guides. Now I've got my image saved, and if we've got the guides on when we save an image, when we open the image up in future, the guides will be there. To clear the guides, just go to your view menu and you'll find it sitting near the bottom, clear guides. I'd like to add some styles around these images now, and to do that we need to select the shapes, not the image. So selecting the shape on the left hand side, I'm going to bring up my effects and decide what I want to apply. Now we've looked at some of these before. I think we do have a bevel and emboss, and we do get a slight view of that here because I've got the settings set quite low. We can make it much greater. I'm not a great fan of this for a picture layout like this, but it's all personal. I do like a stroke line, so I'm going to select that. I'm going to select black. I think it's going to work quite well with these balloons. Now when we're putting fine lines around images in layers, how do we know whether we've got them right or not? Well, one of the ways you can do that is just apply them and click OK, then go to the zoom tool, and especially if you was producing something for printing, have a look at this at 100%, because when we do that, that's when we get a true view of the thickness of the line we've applied. It's here where we need to make that judgment. Is it thick enough or is it too thick? And of course we could actually apply the line with the image zoomed in like this. I can always go back to my stroke if I wasn't certain and say, well, let me double up the 2 to 4. You can see that looks just a wee bit heavy maybe, so maybe I can compromise and say, okay, I'll go down the middle. While I've got this slightly larger on screen, perhaps I could always also add a drop shadow. So let me bring back my effects, just double click and up they come. So there's the drop shadow, and there is where we change the parameters. Now I'm having difficulty seeing it around the edge here, but I can just about see it. I'm going to push it up just a little bit. Maybe just move the distance a bit, the size a little bit. You can see how we can adjust this. That doesn't look too bad at all. I'm going to click OK. Control 0 will fit that back on screen, and already it's beginning to have a little bit of style that's just lifting that image from the canvas. Now I think I did demonstrate before how we can move these effects from one layer to another. Hold the Alt key, click the effects and drag them to the next shape, and then on to the next one. And there we have our artwork complete. Now when I started this work, I just used white as my background as a holding colour, thinking I may change it a little bit later. It actually works remarkably well, I think, with these coloured balloons, but once we've got the work done and in layers and saved, then it's worth trying something else. Sometimes bright colours like these balloons look pretty good on black, but of course if I did that, then the black stroked line is going to be lost, so that would need to be changed to white or maybe even an off-white. So let's quickly take a look at that. Now black is my foreground colour, so remember Alt backspace will always flood the foreground colour, Control backspace will always flood the background colour. If I pick up just one of my black shapes here and change the stroke line to white just to get a feel for what it's going to look like, there we can see it around the one in the centre. Of course having a drop shadow is rather superfluous here, but let's click OK to this. The thickness of the line doesn't look too bad at the moment, and it's on the inside. But of course, to get the effect, I'd need to hold that Alt key and drag the effects onto the other two layers. And I missed that one, so let's try that again. And there we have a completely different presentation, but I hope you'll agree that works too. But maybe I could try just something else too. What I'm going to do here is to pick up the eyedropper tool from the toolbox. I'm going to sample a pale blue from the center oval. You can see it as the foreground color in my color picker. I'm going to select my background and flood the color in. Alt backspace will do that. You can see I would have to consider going back to a black line, so let me do that straight away. Let's go back into our effects here, go back to our black so we get the effect as we work this change through. You can see how quick and easy it is to make changes and to get creative as we work in layers like this. Now I'd like to pick up a much darker blue. Now I could sample a blue from the top there, but I don't think that's going to be dark enough. I'm going to try one of these here. I'm going to pick up a blue from that balloon, and I'm going to use my gradient tool. I'm going to use the linear mode, and from this option here, foreground to transparent. But I'm not going to allow my gradient to fall directly onto my background layer. I can create a new layer for that. Now I can put a number of gradients on one layer, or I can put a gradient on separate layers, which gives me the opportunity to control the density of any gradient with the individual opacity for the layer at the top right of the layers. Sometimes there are so many things you can do with image processing, you wonder sometimes where you're going to start, or more importantly, where you may end. So working on a new blank layer, I'm going to drop the size of my image down just a little bit so I can start the gradient outside the picture space. So I'm going to draw a line and just put a gradient across there. I'm going to do this on one layer, but it is good practice to do it on more than one. But for speed I'll use one layer. But there you can see we can just do a little bit of a variation. And one final thing I'm going to suggest. Let me zoom in to the top here. That's a little bit too far. Let me go down a bit. We can quite clearly see here that we've got pixels that make up the photographic part of this image, but the computer generated color that I've included over here is rather smooth. So once you've got a background to your liking, you can select both of the layers that form the background, or however many you've created it with, right click and just merge those two together, because it's nice sometimes to add a bit of texture or noise. Well, we've got texture filters in Photoshop, as we know, but I often just turn to the simple one of filter, noise, add noise. Nearly always I will go for Gaussian monochromatic noise, 1, 2 or 3% depending on the resolution of the image. Here it looks okay to me, because for a border, when we hit Control 0 and come out, we'll hardly see the difference. But if we was going to print that or present that in a slideshow, then that little bit of noise can make all the difference. Now, creating those shapes on a new blank layer is pretty quick and easy, especially with those shortcut keys where we can make a shape with the Move tool selected, hold the Alt key and just drag a copy and a copy and a copy. We could have a multi-layered presentation created in a few minutes. Now, as we look at our final triptych here, we know that we've got everything saved as a layered file. So we could come back to the image tomorrow morning and change our mind about the background, and we can have it changed in a matter of minutes, including the images too, if we want to.